Today we celebrate the 17th Sunday in Ordinary Time. In our Gospel today, a great crowd followed Jesus, and this was a desperate crowd. How do we know? For two reasons. Firstly, this crowd followed Jesus all the way to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. I've done some research, and it takes about 3 hours or more to walk from one side of the Sea of Galilee to the other side. That's a 6-hour return trip. So these people were willing to walk for 6 hours or more just to see Jesus on that day. That's how desperate they were. The second reason why we know that this was a desperate crowd, because they followed Jesus as though there was no tomorrow. They had no other plan, which is why when they followed Jesus and they got there and they realized that they were hungry, they had nothing to eat. They followed Jesus as though this was their last stand. Have we ever been desperate like this crowd? I tend to think that desperation is in all of us, probably more than we tend to realize. The other night, I went out for a walk. I like to go for a walk at night because it is so quiet. As we know, we are currently in a lockdown, not just any lockdown, but a hard lockdown, which means that all the shops are closed unless they are considered to be absolutely essential. So it was to my own amusement that I noticed that the bottle shops were still open. So work is not essential, Holy Communion is not essential, but alcohol is essential. I'm actually quite sympathetic to why people feel that alcohol is a precious commodity during a time like this. Why do people drink? Why do we drink during a stressful time? Sometimes because we feel frustrated or even angry at what is happening, how life has become so unstable and unpredictable. Sometimes because we are fatigued, we are tired from trying to stay strong during a challenging time, and we feel like we can't do it anymore. Sometimes for reasons we cannot articulate, all we know is that we are in pain, which we want to forget about with the help of alcohol. We know that we are desperate when we keep turning to the same thing over and over again, even though we already know that it's not going to help us. Whether it be drinking too much, or eating too much, or watching too much Netflix, we know that we are desperate when we keep turning to the same thing over and over again, even though we already know that it is not going to make a real difference for the better. Where the desperate crowd in our gospel today found in Jesus someone who was going to make a real difference for the better. They found in him someone who was not going to disappoint them. So Jesus said to the apostles, "Where can we buy some bread for these people to eat?" And Philip answered, "Lord, we definitely do not have enough money to buy bread for these people, not even close." Andrew answered, "There's a boy here who has 5 loaves and 2 fish. But what is that between so many?" In other words, both Philip and Andrew were saying that they were at the very limit of what they could do for these people. There was simply nothing more they could do for them. It was impossible. It would take a miracle for them to be able to look after the desperate crowd. And so a miracle was precisely what they got. Jesus multiplied the loaves and fish, which fed the 5,000 people to their heart's content and still produced plenty left over. Now, this episode, we are told, happened just before the Jewish feast of Passover. And as we know, the Passover was a prefigurement of what was still to come, namely the Eucharist. In other words, there's a close link between the miracle of the loaves and fish and the Eucharist. The miracle of the loaves and fish is like a visual illustration of what happens when we come to celebrate the Eucharist. We come and we offer Jesus a little bit of our time, a little bit of opening into our hearts. And in return, Jesus gives us something that will satisfy us to our heart's content 1,000 times over and still have plenty left over. Jesus gives us himself, and his love, his divine love for us, has infinite value. Unfortunately, because of the lockdown, we are not able to come to Mass and receive the Eucharist. But there is something we can all work on during this time. We can all work on trying to better understand how desperation or hunger operates in our lives, sometimes driving us to things which we already know do not improve our lives. We can then decide to let these things go. We can then decide to let these things go for the sake of Jesus. In order for us to go on an adventure, we have to leave something behind. As simple as that. In order for us to go on a spiritual adventure, we have to leave something behind. And Jesus is worth leaving everything behind for. Sometimes we make mistakes, but we should definitely keep trying because Jesus is worth it. Sooner or later, he will come to us in our consciousness and feed us with his merciful presence. When we come to better understand how desperation or hunger operates in our lives, then we are in a much better position to appreciate the infinite value of Jesus in the Eucharist. So I look forward to being able to celebrate Mass with you before too long. In the meantime, have a good day and God bless you.